go. It is podcasting time. Glenn Powers here from POWERWORKS Automotive. We're going to talk cars. We got lots to talk about. I mean, we could just have a whole conversation about Colin's Beetle. And you've got one coming. This is the race. He was out on the track. He was telling me the stories about just getting this thing ready for the road. Passenger door was a small problem with the automatic locking system. Who would have known in 2000 that they had electronic locking systems on these doors?
Oh, standard, it's a Beetle.
That's what I said, ahead of its day. The best story you had, and if you've missed any of this, the We Will Fix It podcast, the last episode started with this conversation about the Beetle and the racing and you guys doing some work on that car. And just it's a crazy story.
Which will have to, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that soon.
He said he's bringing it back in, it's getting a full workover.
Oh no, I know that. Did he tell you that this morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's going to happen, but we've got a car for our garage.
Yeah, so I was wondering how that's all going to work because you've got a car, there's other cars out there. How's that going to work?
I think we're pretty much sure we're going to get 5.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
What's 10
5.
though?
We need 10 because then we can, I believe, and I may have misunderstood, but I believe at 10 we can have our own series where they'll close the autodrome.
Okay.
And it's just us.
All right.
So that'd be good.
Yeah.
I mean, our car's going to win.
I was just thinking you and DJ
The thing is that
working on a Volkswagen.
Well, this is one advantage we've got, but the other thing is that Colin doesn't realise, and I'm quite glaring me in the face, and it's quite obvious to me and DJ. Me and DJ, I remember both sort of side-eyeing each other and looking at each other with grins, rubbing our hands together and licking our lips, basically, because it's garages putting cars together on a racetrack. We're going to fight to the death.
Yeah.
You can't lose to another garage.
Yeah.
You just can't.
And you've got maybe some little options you can put into yours within the rules. Are you going to fire one of those on Colin's car? I just can't imagine.
Well, this is the thing. Obviously, I'd be more than happy. Any VW that comes in the garage is more than welcome. And obviously, there's quite a strict set of rules in terms of it has to kind of be a standard car.
Yeah.
You can do what you want to it within. It has to stay road legal as well, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can't, cut the floor pan out and put a plastic one in and all that stuff. So we've got to be, it's got to be road legal. As of now, I don't really care whether it's road legal or not. Colin's idea, which is a great idea, is that the garages have them registered as the garage. So you have works teams.
Right. They can use it as delivery cars or.
Then we can use it and get exposure. It's branded and everything else. We've got 2 amazing looking vans. Yeah. Chef's kiss worthy of looks. Nice. And then, we're just about to finish an R32 Golf, so that'll be branded. I need to finish my S6, so we're gonna have some nice cars. We don't need a race Beetle. Plus, exactly what's going to happen is it's going to go out on a Thursday afternoon, race day Friday, and get side swiped in it, and then I don't make the race. So it's a bit too risky for me to use it anyway, and I'm not just going to park it up. So we'll try and push for no need to register it and get it just track ready instead of road ready, because then we can have some real fun with it. But garages going against each other, definitely. I mean,
is El Nabuda in on this? Because they're the Volkswagen.
No, they're definitely not going to get involved in this. But it's all good fun.
But I would think the boys over there and the ladies over there would want to be in on this. I
speak to the after sales manager over there relatively regularly.
Yeah, and he just said no.
The guy hasn't got time. I've asked him to come on here.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to have the El Nabuda dudes.
The guy's got no time to tie his shoes in the morning. He's back to Velcro. Really? It's like literally, he's talk about under
pressure.
Right? Yeah. The first time I met him, I went to Bahrain to meet the guys at Bebahani Brothers who run the VW franchise there, and he was just floating on air. He was so happy, everything was cool. It was 2013 or 2014.
Good time.
Things were on the way up here, everything was going good. We were, a few months out from the expo being announced and all that stuff. And then crunch, and now it's like trim the fat, you've got too many staff. We've got 50 bays, why is there only 100 cars booked in today? Car sales go through the floor, workshop flow goes through the floor, 100% nothing he can do about it. He can't go and sell cars.
Right.
So, yeah, he's...
Sounds to me like he's got to pay to work on one of these things.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, but they never have the time. And the problem is, the guy's a master tech.
Right.
So I totally understand where his head's going to be at. And he's
never going to be.
It's just going to be too much of an OCD situation, which me and DJ have already talked about this. It's going to be one of those where, look, this car's got our name on it. What we were going to do originally was operate a vehicle for a team and then have our own team vehicle. But the problem with that would be then that anything obviously done by us to our car would be so blatantly obvious because we've got another car out the garage that's 3 seconds a lap slower.
Yeah.
So, plus the cost, you know. I mean, we're only talking about 20, maybe, it's probably going to be about 30, 35K to be approved and ready for a race. But it's, you know.
It's time in there.
It's between 4 or 5 people, it's manageable.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And where else in the world can you do that?
Yeah.
Motorsport's so cheap here.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. And that autodrome is an absolutely fantastic track.
Underutilized. Absolutely underutilized.
Yeah, we can't necessarily go through it after. We've just had a little conversation off air before about the rules here, but the whole story about what happened with the autodrome is an interesting one. Yeah. I'm sure there's information out there on Google. I've heard it passed on 3 or 4 different separate conversations, very similar story about it, but it's a Formula One quality track.
Yeah.
Better than Yas Island. Not used for the Formula One for a reason, as I've been explained to, but great track. Yeah. Really, really great track.
They do the 24-hour races and stuff there.
Yeah, which you can hear from where I am up near the Country Lakes.
I always laugh because it's really close to the residential area of the ranches and Motor City.
Yeah.
And then you've got Sports City on the other side. Yeah. I mean, it's
I'm up right out past the 611 and you can hear it. Because the first time we lived there, when it was during last year's 24-hour, I thought it was people out in the desert. Because we hear people in the desert quite often. Yeah. We're right up onto the desert, but no, it was the autodrome. It's like literally 24 hours of the noise. But it's not, it's more like white noise, kind of soothing when you're up there. Yeah. I can't imagine what it's like. Then again, if you move to a place called Motor City, you kind of expect it, right? You know, unless you thought you were going to be moving to Detroit, which nobody's doing.
Yeah, it's like, I thought, yeah. Hey, here's an interesting one today, just a curiosity. We will start jumping into some of these things. We've got a nice little list, and of course, things to yammer on about. Do you think there are any actual regulations on the size of brake lights on vehicles? I mean, you have to have brake lights, but how big do they have to be?
There must be a regulation on it.
I don't know.
There must be.
I'm wondering, or because we brought this up this morning. I was behind a Land Rover Discovery.
Right.
Not the prettiest vehicle in the world.
Oh, with the wonky plate, the new one with no wheel on the back.
Yeah, that's the one.
Horrific.
And, it was a little weird. So I'm driving behind this thing, and you can't help but look at it because it's in my face.
It's kind of like when you're kidding, you shouldn't stare at somebody.
It's like, and I'm just looking, I go, what is it about that thing? And all I keep thinking is, I wonder if it's nice inside. And I got another story about that, but I just wondered, is it nice to drive? Haven't driven one. I guess I should talk to the Altair guys, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at it, and I'm going, it hasn't sold me. But then the guy puts on his brake lights, and of course you've got, like every vehicle, you got the third brake light up the top of the back window, which is, that strip. And then you've got the actual brake lights on both of the rear quarter panels that were really small. So you've got that whole light system for your signal light and your riding lights. And the brake light is the small square on the outside piece on the quarter panel of each of these lights. So if you're looking at the entire light...
Visualize this with a Google search.
Yeah, take a look, you'll get it. If you're looking at the entire light, you're probably looking at, a 6-inch by 4-inch piece. The brake light is tiny. The part that illuminates when you put on the brake is this tiny piece on each side of the whole light system. And I thought, how is that possible? Like it's such an underutilized piece of lighting that actually has a purpose to tell me this guy's putting on his brake. And the rest of it must just be for driving lights and signal lights, and someone's made a decision somewhere. But I thought, And that's when I started thinking, are there no actual regulations on the minimum size or the expected size? And I guess there may be at the minimum, I don't know.
There must be. There's a position regulation, I guess.
Yeah. So it's in the right position,
yeah.
And it's there, and it does come on, and you do see it. But as I'm looking at it, I was going, you could miss that if they just flick it on, flick it off quick and that.
I mean, they are exceptionally bright.
They are bright, I got to say. They are bright.
Lights these days are ridiculous. But I mean, I'm looking at the back end of this car, and it's making me feel a bit sick. Why have they done that? It's not like like they've said, well, we used to have a wheel there, but we're not going to have a wheel there, but we'll make it out as though we have got a wheel there. Yeah. And we'll put the number plate off to the side. Yeah. It just looks like a boxer that's had its nose broken.
It's weird. But they sell lots of them. People love them.
The finish looks great on it. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like it looks like a nicely built car, and the interior is a Land Rover, so it will be great. Yeah. And it will drive great because nothing really matches a Land Rover, does it?
No.
I don't know what they've done to the back.
Yeah, it's weird. And it was just that. And so then, of course, I'm looking at all the other vehicles that are going by, and I'm seeing some of the older things that are out there. Some of the older Toyotas and a Renault, and they're a Bolt went by, and man, a Cruise went by. They've got these big, massive lights, and the brake lights are in your face, like on a lamppost, right? So I just thought, interesting.
It's a big car, that Discovery as well. You'd think there'd be some proportional aspect to the minimum size. There must be a minimum size.
I don't know.
Surely.
I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
Obviously, then again, who determines that? Is it the MOT, the DOT?
Yeah. I don't know.
Who determines that? So maybe
I would think each country has its own, because lighting is one of those things when people buy cars and say, oh, can I take my car to another country?
Yeah.
Lighting is a big one, what kind of light indicators you have. And there's hundreds of differences on a car when they start shipping them around the world that they have to build them for.
Yeah, things like yellow fog lights, which were, they were quite they were kind of either an accepted or required thing in certain parts of North America. Mm. But in the UK, they weren't happy about them for a start, and you couldn't have them. Right. And then you've got things like, obviously, which way they point, because right-hand drive, left-hand drive.
Right.
And, I mean, there's regulations on the speed of a signal, the way your signal can flash, how fast that can flash. There's regulations on that. And, hey, maybe there isn't a size.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's not. I think it is do what you want.
As long as they're red and as long as on the outside. Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah. And I think that's one of those things. It was a mental note to myself. If I'm ever buying a car again, if I'm looking at it, make sure you check to see how visible the braking system is going to be. Because I just want people to know putting on the brakes. Which might sound like a really small, trivial thing, but...
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident that had it been getting on late afternoon, early evening, or night time, you certainly wouldn't have had the same thought.
But well, and look, truth be told, I was driving west, so the sun was behind me, shining on the back of these vehicles. Yeah. So it was the worst conditions.
Yeah, and like you say, the high level brake light is...
Yeah. I mean, that's what caught my eye anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Interesting. The other one that caught my eye was also my fingers yesterday, was taking the slider windows out of the Jeep, and I noticed on both doors in the exact same spot, there's kind of like a piece of sill rubber.
Okay.
That is starting to go back to nature. And I was looking, I go, what's going on here? And I'm going, 2008. This thing sits out in the heat. I do cover it, so it's covered, and I do, but the rubber, which is really a cosmetic piece, but I'm sure it does something. Yeah, is deteriorating. Like it was soft. It was gooey.
Yeah, they go horrible, don't they?
And I was just going, this is not good.
One of the things is that it's obviously it's great to cover the cars up when we're parked and not using them, but you do use those cars. You've done some good kilometers in those cars.
And they do sit out
13 years, and they are out for a while.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, they do get exposed to the elements.
Yeah. And 2 or 3 hours every day of UV. Yeah. Of an average for 13 years.
I thought that's pretty good. I thought that's a pretty good number.
It's not bad, is it?
But there's a lot of rubber now.
We couldn't do it. Humans couldn't do it.
No.
So it's not bad, really, but it does go horrible. And the problem is then it looks normal, and you think, what's that? You try and move it, and as soon as it's fallen apart, then it's done with. Yeah. Like, that's the end of it. But the issue comes with like you say, it does have a function. It will probably be to channel water.
That's what I was looking at it going, what exactly does this do? Because it's not the rubber that's sealing up against the door. I'm going, yeah, this is a channel.
Channel water, or it'll channel air as it's being driven. But, you know, it could be worse, and it could be a car where it starts to go around the windscreen.
Right.
You know, these are the ones that always baffle me. And it's always the people that should know better. You know, it's always your established manufacturer. One that comes to mind just because it's an absolute nightmare trying to explain to a customer, yes, I need to replace the whole windscreen, is a couple of BMW models where the seal around the glass comes with the glass.
Oh, really?
So you've got to get the whole windscreen out and change the whole thing.
That must be a big job.
Yeah, and it's not cheap. I mean, glass isn't expensive. Let's just say that.
I'm always surprised at how inexpensive windscreens are.
And that's rightly so, because it's the same way. For me, seatbelts shouldn't be expensive, but because they're all pyrotechnic now, the manufacturer is not the end of the world. It's the actual shipping of the part, because they're pyrotechnic. They have pretensioners on them. They become very expensive, and they have to be shipped very delicately because they're safety items. But for me, a seatbelt should not be an expensive thing. It's almost like, you know, there should be a subsidy on them from the manufacturer and the government to match, so that because the problem is, if you've got a frayed seatbelt, you go, okay, I better get that checked out. You know, they pick that up on the RTA test or the MOT test, whatever. And you go down to the garage and they say, yeah, it's like 2,000 dirhams to replace. Forget it. I'll burn the fray off and I'll put some clear nail varnish on the edge so it doesn't fray straight away again. And I'll get on with it. But it's a seatbelt.
I'm thinking they just don't sell a lot of them.
No, they don't. They understandably they don't, but they shouldn't be as expensive.
No, and let's face it, seatbelts have been using the same kind of material,
effectively exactly
the same mechanism forever.
Yeah,
it's someone's got a box of them, and it's like we just churn these suckers out.
Yeah,
and this can't be expensive to make.
Yeah, whether it's one of the early like Kangol ones that they used to have in the old Beetles and stuff that was sometimes fitted on the front, that were literally just a belt with a buckle. To the, you know, retractable ratchet ones now, the belt itself is the same. And whilst you expect and require a great level of skill in building them, they should be cheaper, because people would change them more often if there was. I mean, I don't know, there's probably data out there on how many times an accident's caused a fatality or a serious injury where a seatbelt's failed.
I wonder.
There must be data on that.
That's a good question.
And I bet there are, especially in America, where the pushback against seatbelts from the motoring lobby was huge in the 60s.
Do you remember those seatbelts they had where it had a little motorized drive in the door? So how often did those things break?
Yeah.
Forget the seatbelt, just the mechanism.
Yeah. I remember seatbelts that were inertia type, so that you'd take the car for a test, like in the 50s and 60s, the classic American stuff. And so now you pull on them and the reel's an inertia reel and it will lock the ratchet and it stops it.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But the old American ones had a weight in the door. So you'd have to be driving the car and stop the car. The inertia was actually separate. It was inertia was part of the door. So the car had to be moving for it to work. So you'd have to roll the car and pull the belt and it wouldn't move. So you get the car into the test centre, the car's sat still in the test lane, they're pulling it and it doesn't lock, fail. That's not how it works. That must happen daily here, because you see so many of those. It must happen daily. I've experienced it more than once, maybe 2 or 3 times I've experienced that, where we've had to go back to the test centre and talk to the supervisor and explain and show them and take them a drive. I said, look, I'm driving, if I brake, I can't pull the steering wheel. Pull the seatbelt, sorry. And, okay. You know, and I'm sure they'll remember it for next time, but that doesn't mean the testers do, and not everybody gets to the supervisor. So, you know, there's been massive leaps forward with seatbelts. You know, seatbelts now will automatically tighten as you go around a corner. As the G's reach a certain level, they'll automatically tighten as you brake, depending on your speed and how hard and how quickly you hit the brake. Before you even notice the vehicle stopping, you'll feel the seatbelt tighten.
I almost wonder, is there some electronic systems now put in so that the seatbelt has an effect with airbags?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
tighten you up right away.
It's all on the same system. So seatbelts and airbags are all on the SRS system. Supplementary restraints. They're all work together from the same control unit. But I guess.
Oh, yeah, a point of reference, and it's great for the quiz people. How many people see that SRS written on their steering wheel, on the dash, and have no idea what it means?
Yeah, it used to be a big deal, right?
Yeah.
On the back of cars, on the window. Volvo used to put it on the windows.
that was in the day. Now every car has it.
Yeah, and it's taken for granted as well. Mm-hmm. But I would guess, say we see, as an easy number, 50 cars a week. I reckon 5 of them would have a frayed seatbelt.
50 cars a week.
If you take 50 cars a week, you're saying at least 200 to...
And you guys got a modest garage.
You're saying 200 odd seatbelts. Some cars have only got 2, some have got 5, some have got 7, maybe 250 seatbelts. So of those, I would say 5 every week would probably have a frayed seatbelt. So then to go to somebody, especially in our situation where a lot of the cars we see are at least 6 years old, because don't forget, for the last 5 or 6 years, manufacturers have been giving 5-year warranties.
Yeah.
So we're not seeing them till they're 6 years old. Yeah. To tell somebody, the seatbelt that you probably don't use that often is frayed, it's 2,000 dirhams to replace. Forget about it. No. No. And I just think it's one of those, like glass, we got onto this because glass is quite cheap, and it should be, because it's safe, and it's so important for people to get it replaced. It's so important. You can't see if the glass cracks. And so
here with our sandy environment, it just gets sandblasted.
Yeah, it definitely is a good thing how cheap it is. Now, I'm sure that's not because of what we're saying with seatbelts, because of subsidy. It's just from a happy coincidence that glass is relatively inexpensive to replace.
But the systems for the replacing of them, like you said, with a Beamer, some of the BMWs have got now rubber around them. The rubber,
yeah, so they come with the rubber and the chrome trims. Yeah,
that's as soon as you start playing with that. What about the windshields that have integrated antennas? Or
yeah, so this is the other thing, right? So now we're all got antennas in there, sat nav, and GPRS and radio.
So my vehicle is easy. It's 20 minutes. You can you take your fishing thing and you saw it out. You put down the black junk, put it on, walk away.
Yeah.
But some of these more high-tech vehicles, you're looking at hours.
Yeah. You've got to be very careful. You've got trims to take off on the inside, trims to take off on the outside, and it's often overlooked. I suppose it's one of those, isn't it? Until you've had one fail on you, you don't really know how much of a thing it is to deal with. And what's good here, which wasn't the case when I first came here, or it wasn't as widely used, more and more now, they do the mobile replacement.
Yeah.
So they'll come to you and replace it at work or at home, and your insurance will take 50 dirhams excess, or maybe not even anything, and then it's done, and it's good. That's great.
No, I love those. I've had multiple windshields replaced by guys, and they come up, they got all the equipment, they know that's all they do.
Yeah.
Is windshields, and they take one look and they go, oh, thankfully.
Yeah, it's a Wrangler.
Yours is easy.
Yes, it's a Wrangler. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and I'm always amazed also just at the fact that it's just held in place with this black adhesive.
Yeah.
Like that's it. There's no screws. There's no brackets. The windshield is held in place with this black.
Windscreen sealant, nice.
Yeah.
Very, very strong.
Yeah.
DJ and myself, we repaired our work boots with windscreen sealant. DJ's repaired suspension bushers with windscreen sealant on his own car before. Lasts forever. And they do have to cut it, like the cheese wire that we call it, they cut it out with, is tough stuff.
Yeah.
And they get through, it's not like that one will last them forever. This is steel high tension wire. But they still have to replace them because it wears it out.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff.
That's crazy. I wanted to talk a little bit about the modifications that our good friend Andrew Thomas is doing to his. Is he venturing? And he was very excited about all of the work he's doing, and he said, "Man, it's like Amazon's become my new best friend," and I'm just going. Take away this guy's Amazon account. So, and he led off the conversation. He says, "Oh, does Glenn talk to you about my modifications?" And he starts off with,
"Where do you start?"
Well, he started by going, "I got this wonderful dash cover," and he's going, "Dude, it's only $25."
Yeah.
And I'm just going, "Oh my!" He's gone over to the dark side of car modifications. And he's describing it to me. He said, "Oh, there's a few cracks on that dash, so I put this on," and I'm just thinking Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, it's not quite that, but that's a great reference. It's not quite that, but no, it's look. There's a great channel called Donut Media. And I don't follow them on YouTube. I just watch them when they come up on Facebook. Some of their videos are fantastic. And the best ones are when they buy the 10 most popular accessories for cars off of Amazon.
Okay.
And then they rate them.
Yeah.
And then they buy the 10 most stupid and they rate them. And the 10 lowest rated, the 10 highest rated. And they do various...
Yeah. It's a lot of product they're buying.
Oh man, I mean, there's things on there. Who's even come up with this? You know, why? This has solved a problem that didn't exist in the first place. So, you know, Andrew so far has been quite lucky in that he's managed to stay sensible in what is effectively not a very sensible practice in modifying his car.
He's got a midlife crisis coming on.
I'm not sure it's that, you know.
I think it's coming. I think he's just revving up for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's that. What happened was he's realised that he can't really sell the Tahoe. There's not really anything wrong with it.
He's got a good year too. Like his is that year, the in-between year where they're still kind of round, but
Yeah,
they're getting a little bit square and
built like tanks.
yeah.
Really relatively easy to fix. We had to machine his diff tube out last time because the bearing collapsed and it wore the diff tube out. So we had to weld it back in and then machine it out to a perfect circle again so we could put the bearing in for the drive shaft, for the axle shaft, the half shaft, whatever you want to call it. And that was a job. That was like that was one of those jobs where I wish we'd recorded it. That would have been great time-lapse video, that. So just cathartic to watch it. It was really, really cool. But anyway, we did it, and he spent some sensible money on the car, fixing problems that needed fixing and getting it up and running. So his last bill was chunky, and he paid it, but he'd painted his wheels.
That's what he's telling me about.
So he painted his wheels with a Whizzy can from the Ace Hardware or wherever he got it from. And then we washed his car and blasted the paint off with the pressure washer. So I didn't know he'd not primed it. I should have guessed, really. He never said he had, I just assumed. So we pressure washed it and it blew the paint off. So we redid them. And I was like, oh, that's great. I really forgot how much I enjoyed this. So then he did the Chevrolet logo on the front.
Right.
Masked it all off with and I can imagine him there with the newspaper and the tape. And obviously he's got his kids, so his kids would have been watching it. And that's a great thing to watch your dad do. And you know, he's masked it all up and painted it, and he's chuffed with himself. And then he's got this dashboard cover from there. And I can't remember if he got that because he's just always wanted one, or if his dashboard was actually cracked.
I think he said his dashboard was cracked.
I think it probably was, but I think secretly he's always wanted one.
Yeah.
But it fits perfectly.
Well, that's what he was saying. He's a year model that it just works, and the number of products that are available.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and they're cheap.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, he lost his key fob, his remote entry and locking fob. So he lost that. So he's always been using the manual key. So he bought a set of key fobs, and we managed to pair them up for the lock-in. We cut the blades on the new keys that they came with and got them to start and coded the immobilizer in. So now he's got 2 keys that work with fobs and 1 manual key as a spare. So he's back to the 20th century with having remote lock-in, you know.
There we go.
And that was only a few dollars. I mean,
he said
getting them cut and paired was it?
Yeah, he said the pairing was more expensive than anything, but still miles cheaper than if he'd gone back to the agency and gotten the
2,000 dirhams for a key.
Yeah.
Which they don't cut on site, so you order it for the car. Now, if the car's ever had any changes, then that's going to come out as it was from the factory, not how it is now. And you've got to give your passport, which is totally understandable.
Do you think anyone goes back and looks at that stuff, though?
Well,
I know they take all sorts of information when I go get keys cut, and I'm just wondering, is anyone ever going to go? It doesn't get put onto a database. Does anyone?
I guess it's a matter of, you know, in the event of a crime. I guess. You know, somebody stole my car. Did they? Let's check. How have they done that? Oh, well, they must have had a key. Because there's no sign of forced entry. Well, I haven't given them a key. My keys are here. And then they're going to go and check all these locksmiths and what have you. So, there's obviously, it doesn't really happen here, but it's there as a fail-safe, I guess. But from the dealer, they've got no choice. They've got to submit that to the factory. Right. So, you know, that's just the way it is. But yeah, you're talking a couple of $1,000 dirhams for a key supplied and programmed from the dealer. Easily.
That's a lot. So what do you think he's going to do next? Because he's
supercharger.
Really?
No. We talked about a tune. We talked about a tune on it. It's, those LS engines can take some power through them. It's not a turbo. It's not a supercharger. There's not massive amounts, but you get another 30, 35 horsepower from a software tune on it.
Okay.
Get him a nice exhaust upgrade with a higher flow rate and an intake upgrade. You might get to 45, 50 horsepower, which is that's decent. Chunk, and it'll sound better and respond better. The thing is, you've just got to realise that this has all been done to an engine that's worked.
Yeah.
Done a lot of work. Last time we had the classic LS issue of fluctuating oil pressure.
Right.
Now, it's very unusual for the oil, in my experience. Joey Woo is going to probably have different experience, certainly in a climate that's like theirs compared to ours. But in my experience, it's very unusual for the pressure sensors to fail. But we took the pressure sensor out. It was showing 0 oil pressure on the gauge on the dashboard. Put the manual gauge in, it showed an oil pressure of about 3 bar. So we were happy with that, and it wasn't fluctuating. So we put a pressure sensor in, and it was okay. But then we got the gauge to fluctuate.
Right.
Now on those, there's an O-ring that sits in the bottom of the engine around the pickup that basically, like a straw in a drink, sucks oil to the pump. Or the pump sucks oil through, and there's an O-ring on it, and it degrades and splits. So then the oil, it's like trying to drink, take the straw analogy is perfect. You put a hole in the side of your straw while you try and have a drink. Can't do it. Or try and have a drink through a straw without closing your mouth. It doesn't happen, does it? So the same effectively happens. The oil can't get pulled up through, and the oil pump can't pump enough oil around. So the level of pressure will fluctuate. And so we just took the sump off and replaced the O-ring, put it back on, and that was that. It was done, right as rain. But the engine, that's one seal in the engine. There's hundreds of others. That's the common one for failing, just because of where it is and the hammer it gets and the carbon that's constantly surrounded by oil and etc. etc. So that's done now. He's done a lot of highway driving on it, not so much town driving, so that's probably a good thing as well. So a bit of a tune on it, a bit more fun, exhaust intake.
Little lift, maybe?
I say lower it.
Lower it?
I say lower it.
See, everyone's always wanted to take it up, but he's
Look, you're not going to use it. You could, but you're not going to use it in the desert.
Right.
The last time I remember speaking to Andrew about him camping in the desert here was never. So
we were like, look, we're classic like him in a sense. We were big campers, and now when someone says you want to go camping, it's like that's a lot of packing up.
My argument exactly the same. My argument with that is not any time. That is not a break.
You go for a picnic in the desert. You go for a camp in the desert. You're taking the same amount of equipment. And
then you get home, everything's full of sand. You've got to get the tent back out to dry it out, and you've got to put everything away. The barbecue needs cleaning.
Yeah, you got to detail your car because it's now full of sand.
I'm 100%. So everyone's sat here listening, what a killjoy, thinking that about me.
Come on, the desert, it's beautiful. You got
it is. Yeah, it is. I'm happy to go a few hours a day and then go home. Yeah, that's where I'm at. It's not a break. Camping is no.
Well, and it's not like you're camping at a. Back in Canada, we'll have provincial parks or national parks. You have, outhouses and you have toilets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you can go in and you can camp, and they've at least got, even if it's chemical toilets, they've got something somewhere.
Yeah.
You go camping in the desert, you're on your own, baby.
Yeah.
It's like you taking either you're taking something or you're digging or, it's. Yeah,
it's no break for me. We've got neighbours that do it all the time, and they spend like 2 hours on a Friday morning packing the truck up, and then 3 hours on a Saturday evening unloading. There's loads of things in those 5 hours, and that's without the stuff they have to do when they get in the house, washing and all that stuff. So it's just me. That's just
to each his own.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's great stuff. I do. Like you say, I love going out in the desert. It's great, but it's not sustainable. And that's why I think
you should lower it. Lower the suspension a little bit.
Lower it. I was telling him about our van yesterday. We just cut the springs. we just took the springs out and took an angle grinder to them and cut the springs a coil at a time. Took 2 off the front and 1.5 off the back, and lowered it down. Now it doesn't drive like any other van. It's very uncomfortable. You've got to be very careful on speed bumps, but it looks great. lower profile tyres,
Yeah.
slightly, gloss black wheels, and it looks good.
But
But it's not the most functional van anymore. But who buys a van for function?
talking about function, a friend of mine just leased Mitsubishi ASX.
Yeah.
And I said, so, thoughts? And he goes, it's a really nice looking car. And whenever...
Yeah, it's probably fair for a Mitsubishi.
He said, whenever you start a sentence with, it's a nice looking car.
And it's like the good sense of humour in a singles ad.
And then he said, what we all know about Mitsubishi. And look, Mitsubishi does some great stuff. But Mitsubishi products don't tend, and we're talking in the automotive industry, and I know someone could say, no, you're totally off base, but I'm using the Pajero as the benchmark here. The technology and the refinement of that ride hasn't seen a whole lot of innovation.
First of all,
in 20 years.
2 words, technology and refinement, do not go together with Pajero.
And I would go on to say, you're looking at a Lancer. The ride of these vehicles tends to be, I'm going to use the word agricultural.
Yeah.
To get a sense of what it is. And that's exactly the way he described it. He said, look, it looks nice. It doesn't drive. And so he's a Nissan guy, he's a Toyota guy, and he's gone through a variety of those vehicles. The Nissan Pathfinder, when it was an SUV. I mean, it still is an SUV, but it looks like a minivan now. It doesn't look like, the old versions of those Pathfinders that were off-road wonders.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys who owned one of those as a family vehicle. He said it doesn't drive like a Nissan or a Toyota. It's a little rougher.
Yeah.
And he said, but you're getting what you pay for, and I got a great deal, so I can live with that.
As I said at the start, for a Mitsubishi, it's not a bad looking car.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's a good looking car. That's just for a Mitsubishi, it's not bad. It's like saying it's fast for a milk float. It's just it's just that what it is. But Mitsubishi kind of fill that space of incredibly reliable Japanese car.
Well, yeah.
But you're not overpaying you overpay for Toyota stuff here. I don't care what anyone says. Oh, Toyota is not worth the money that they charge. There's no way a Prado is 2 times the car of a Pajero brand new. No way. 2 times plus sometimes. No chance. And the price you pay for Land Cruisers and Patrols, which they could put another 0 on the end, and they still sell thousands of them here.
Yeah.
But they're not twice the car the Mitsubishis are. However, with the Nissans and the Toyotas, the tech is a bit more refined. They are quieter inside. You don't feel every bump in the road. But at the opposite of that is, you'd say, I didn't want that. I never want to have to fix this car. I never want it to break down. And I want the extra 100k in my pocket after buying it to enjoy myself at the places that I use it to drive to.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's, for me, the Mitsubishi stuff is, like my granddad had an E-Reg, so our plates come out every year with a letter of the alphabet, or at the moment it's the last 2 numbers of the first 4 digits. It's complicated for any North American to understand. So we buy a car in March or September with the new plates. You can buy any time of the year, but the new plates are released in March and then again in September. My granddad had an E-Reg, which was a 1988, I think, 88 or 87, Mitsubishi Lancer. Apart from the fact that it had a tape deck in it, I challenge anyone to tell me it was any different to the ones that are sold today.
They're not. They're going to be exact. And they might even come with a tape deck still. They do what they do.
Yeah. That car went forever. It was the worst colour burgundy on the outside, the worst combination of, before grey was cool, grey and brown on the inside with like black piping around the seats. Yeah. And a tape deck in it, and orange lights, which they stuck to. They've still got orange lights, crappy orange bulbs in the back of the dashboard still. So, but I don't think they care. Well, they obviously don't care. They've only just killed the Pajero off, which should have happened 10 years ago, really.
I think people keep buying them. They know.
Well, of course they do, because what a price.
And they buy them, and they know that, hey, you know what? This thing's reliable. And even if it's not reliable now, I got to go get it fixed. They've been out so long, people know how to fix them.
If you were to take the pinnacle of a car for me, which is, let's be obviously the honest answer from me is a Golf GTI. Right, a Golf GTI in the UK, if I want it as I want it, manual, couple of extras, but not too crazy, I'm paying over £30,000 easily. And if I'm waiting for a Club Sport or an R, I'm paying £40,000. £40,000, that's 200,000 dirhams.
Yeah.
I can get 2 7-seat Pajeros with screens in the back for the kids for that.
Yeah, there you go. Who's not going to do that?
So of course they should have done it ages ago, and they should have said, we're going to redo this, we're going to have a new. The problem they've got is they could never improve it. Apart from filling it with tech, insulating all the doors, but then the issue then is they haven't got the engines. Mitsubishi not so long ago were using Volkswagen diesel engines because they haven't got the ability to create an engine. There's no, I'm sure the money's probably there, but there's no capacity of the factory or whatever it may be to do that. So the diesel engines were VW ones. We were getting Mitsubishis into the dealer at VW, because they had no idea what they were doing with the engines, and that was just how it was. So if you were to take the Pajero, how do they improve on it? They work off-road.
Yeah.
So you don't really change that. If you change the chassis and the platform, you've then got to change the way the engine fits. If you're going to do all this, you're going to put a new engine in it. Well, we haven't got a new engine, so we're going to borrow one from somebody. Then all of a sudden it's not a Mitsubishi and you're asking for trouble.
Right.
So
it just works.
Get rid of it, And
I don't understand why they're getting rid of them, though. That's the other thing.
Well, the problem is you're never going to make them good for the environment.
Yeah, well, I guess you're right. And that's going back to the whole argument that the tech is, and the way things are designed, and the engines are just...
When I started our Pajero up on the drive, if I started up in the morning to cool it down for 2-3 minutes before the kids got in for school, it would set off the smoke detector and the carbon monoxide detector in the kitchen.
No.
And that's literally going to the back door, start the car, coming back, and obviously just not shutting the door behind me, coming back and shutting the door, and then they'd go off.
Yeah, that's wrong. That's just wrong.
Yeah, that's just how, and apologies to Colin, because he loves the Pajero.
Well, he doesn't drive one, though.
Well, there you go. There you go. He has done for a long time.
Yeah.
And they have kind of got a bit of charm to them.
Yeah.
But
well, I think what I love about the Pajeros, they just all look the same. Like, they haven't really changed in 20 years. It's okay. They've got, they've rounded it a bit and they've moved the tire just a bit.
Yeah.
But really, nothing's changed. So it's like an old friend.
Yeah, but 911s kind of all look the same, and they've got better. So, depending who you talk to, of course.
Good point. I take that point.
I do think they've got better. I mean, I think with the ASX, which is what we started talking about, we've had a few in, and great car, but they always, to me, smack of a rental.
Well, he's leased it. So these guys, it's a leaser.
Yeah, I can't see. There's not much depreciation because there's not much initial value, which is another good thing about them. And like I say, they're going to be great. Reliability, never going to have a problem with it. Tires, brakes, oil change.
Right, you're done.
Yeah,
and that's what you want. And and he instantly looking at that ASX, going back to it, he's looking at it. He's going, it kind of has the Nissan look of some of these funkier Nissans and these Toyotas, but it's not one.
No.
so anyway, there we go. It's what else you got going on in the shop? You were sharing a story with me, and we don't want to go to the whole end of that story, but it was talking about coolant systems and failures, and what a story.
Yeah, I still sort of pinching myself that it actually happened.
It's like it was a setup by a master tech just to see if you could figure it out.
Yeah, one of those that you get on the assessment. Yeah, it's probably, that's not a bad analogy. That we got a Land Rover in and overheated. Nothing to do with it being a Land Rover, all cars overheat.
Yeah.
And after taking the car and testing it, we got oil in the water. This is long story short, obviously there's in-betweens. Oil's coming from the engine oil cooler. Makes absolutely no sense not to change the transmission oil cooler at this point. So change the coolers, flush the system out, check all the hoses, make sure they're all okay, clean them out individually, put it all back together. Cannot get it to bleed properly, can't get the air out. Realise they're getting pressure in the top hose. We do a combustion leak check and head gasket's failed. Take the spark plugs out, leave the engine, 20 minutes, crank the engine, water coming out the cylinders. Excellent. So do the same again, send a video to the customer. Really sorry, head gasket's failed, it's overheated one too many times, we've had oil in the system. This is what it's going to be to fix it. And by the time you've put the head gasket repair on, which we can now do on the 5 litre V8s, which couldn't do before, so the parts weren't available, loosely based on, well, it is a Ford V8, kind of loosely based on the Mustang 5.0, which is a 4.9, I think. Whatever.
5 sounds better. They rounded it up. They rounded it up.
Well, what was Ice Cube? What was it? Vanilla Ice. So you've got a situation where the car's worth 40k, your bill's 30 plus, and then you're going to have tyres, brakes, and oil change again in the next 6 months. I mean,
you're looking at it going, it's just done.
What do you do?
Yeah. It's always that one though, because you don't want to get a new car either.
No, exactly. You might be buying another used one, which you're buying more problems.
Yeah.
But you can't. But then you can't sell it with a blown head gasket.
You can't do that either.
So I've known the guy for a while. He's a really, really good customer, and appreciates information. So just have a chat with him on the phone. I said, look, we don't pride ourselves on these kind of repairs. We don't offer them to everybody because not everybody's got the right capacity or character, let's say, to accept what I'm about to tell you is I'm going to ask you for some money now to try something that's probably not going to work. But if it does work, we don't have to spend any more money on it. Not everybody likes that. Yeah. So we'll get some liquid gasket, and it's basically, I don't know what's in it, but it's some kind of witch's brew in a bottle that you pour in the coolant system, and it fills holes and cures in the hole and seals them.
So is this going to last them long enough to get them 6 more months out of this thing?
Who knows?
You never know.
Who knows? I've never done any kind of long-term testing, to be quite frank. Any time it's ever happened, they've gone with the car straight away and traded it in. They just wanted to be able to trade it in, and which is what's going to happen here, I assume. So we pour it in with, like I said to you yesterday when I was telling you about it, I think it's like a 10%. I expect a 10% success rate. Never found that 10% until yesterday, and it worked. And I was like, no, it can't be. Let's drive it again. Let's drive it again. Keep it in second gear and drive it again. Let's drive it again, drive it again. It's fine. Left it to cool down, plugs out. 20 minutes later, cranked it, no water. Combustion leak check, no pressure in the engine, everything okay.
It's amazing.
So,
who knows what's in that?
That's 350 dirhams later, the customer's 20 grand bills disappeared, and he can go and trade it in.
Yeah.
And I told him and told him and told him before, and I've told him and told him again after, I have not fixed your car. Yeah. This is like, you've been axe wound on the back and you've put a Band-Aid over it. Yeah. It's not fixed, but it's okay for now till you get somewhere to get it either off your hands and traded in, or you run it into the ground, and next time it goes, you're prepared to repair.
Yeah, you're done. Interesting story.
Yeah, and these things are sold as working, as something that works. We've just never had, they're not going to fill a hole in a block.
No.
So if a head gasket's been worn through and it's gone through the block or the head, they're not going to sort that. But this was obviously early stages, and it's repaired the gasket effectively, and it's been okay. So
nice.
Happy days.
Yeah, happy days for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
What else you got going on in the shop? What else is catching your attention these days?
It's busy because I'm trying to open a shop in DIP whilst managing and running the one in Al Quoz. Obviously, me and DJ are headless chickens a little bit at the moment, yeah. But there's plenty going on. We're trying to, at the moment, we're trying to input processes. It's all about getting the processes right. We're working with
so important, how to follow through on things.
One of the problems is, it's very easy to say, well, you own the business, or DJ, you're the manager, you need to delegate. But it doesn't work like that because we've got a way of doing it, which if we leave people to try and do, it invariably falls down.
Right.
So then we try or don't try, but we end up micromanaging every aspect of it. Yeah. Then you forget what you were doing before, so something else falls down. So you go back to sort that, and then the process falls down, and then you're just back and forth between things. So it's difficult that we became so busy so quickly, and we weren't able to get these put in place gradually. Plus the fact that the first year of being open, I was on my own, whereas originally DJ was going to be here, but COVID happened, and what can you do? So it's it's a matter of just catching up with everything and keeping it on. Obviously, we're going to more than double effectively in capacity when DIP opens. We'll have the same number of work bays, but more physical ground space. We'll have more parts in stock from Borg and Beck, so we can save time on parts supply, save money for customers because the parts price will be much better. And these things are taking up a lot of time, but they'll be worth it in the end. The garage is ticking along, usual stuff coming in. We're looking at launching a club, like an invitation-only club, which would be a monthly subscription. We're just trying to work the price point out depending on the vehicles, which vehicles we can exclude and which vehicles we can include, so that, you know, somebody comes in and has a 7k bill, we could say to them, look, if you'd have paid 400 a month, this would have all been covered, you know. So for £5,000 for the year, effectively, or if you pay it up front, maybe 4,000 for the year, we cover all these things: your servicing, your recovery, this, and this. Does two things. From a purely business point of view, it helps our cash flow. We start off every month positive with money coming in, or a lump sum up front. It increases our buying power because we've got money to then buy parts and get a better price. Oil and parts have gone up horribly. I had to send a letter to Colin to say that their prices have got to increase. I've got no choice. I'm very sorry. I mean, it's been 4 years since they had an increase, you know. So we've just got to that point where we have no choice. But if we can increase our buying power, and that only comes with having cash, you know, we've got to the point now where we need to stop paying this investment back. So we can't be saying, well, I need that money for this. So we try and get customers to be there. And like I say, from a business point of view, it increases that buying power so we can, but also from a customer point of view, peace of mind. You know,
win-win.
You know, everybody's the typical subscription model that most people are familiar with is a mobile phone. Pretty much everyone's got one that's on a contract. A lot of people are pay as you go, but the contract one is, well, I'm always going to be able to use my phone if I've paid my bill. Netflix, I'm always going to be able to watch something on TV if I've paid my subscription. And to have that issue in the morning where the car doesn't start and to think, oh, I've already paid. Or my payment goes out next week and it's covered. It's great. I need a battery, I need a recovery. I'm going to pay $450 for the battery, plus 100 for the recovery, plus 100 for the call out, whatever it might be. That's already been covered by my payment. And the service is due in a couple of months. That's already been covered. You know. So this is the idea with it. It benefits the business, obviously, and I'm not interested in cloak and dagger stuff and smoke and mirrors. The fact of the matter is it benefits the business, but it benefits us in a way to be able to offer a better service, and it also helps with customers to reduce their unexpected expense. You know, we've always said to people that have certain types of cars, look, the only way to budget your expense on vehicles is to go and get a rental. What a stupid thing to have to say. Because we're in the business of fixing cars, we don't fix rental cars. We just don't. We're out of their price point for rental car companies, which is fair enough. But we're just throwing business away. We're telling customers to rent a car and we're never going to see them again. Well, you know, how do we employ our staff and pay their salaries and support 25 families if we're not getting cars through the door? So we've got a duty of care to the customer, but we've also got one to the business. And I think if we can get that, we'll do it on a trial. It's going to be a trial. So there'll be invites sent to maybe 25, 30 people. And we'll say, look, you're in an exclusive invite only. This is the information here. Regardless of whether it works for us or not, you're covered for a year. We're going to trial it. And if it works, then that's your rate for the rest of your time wanting to pay for it, regardless of what we decide to implement going forward. And, you know, we might say the price point is tiered. We might have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. We might say it's 250, 350, 450, whatever it may be. And then when we've done the trial, we might say, can't do that. We need to be 450, 550, 650. But your price will be fixed if, you know, you've signed up. And I'm keen to get that going. It's good. And we've got payment platforms here that now allow that. I was talking to Andrew about one yesterday. And it's a lot of work to do, something I never thought I'd be doing when I started my apprenticeship 20 years ago, whenever it was. But it's it's a different side of the business which I appreciate getting to know about. Yeah.